Yeah, like, and she says, "I'm going to LA for Faith," and Riley hears Angel and I have an orgy planned,
Right.
basically. Like,
Yeah. Hello, everyone. This is Alex.
and this is M.
Welcome to our second ever episode of The Good, the Bad, the Basic.
This is the podcast for millennials and Gen X who are caught up in the nostalgia of the entertainment of our youth.
On this podcast, we'll be discussing what we loved, what we hated, and what was just a bit problematic about our old faves.
On this episode, we are continuing our dissection of the beloved, iconic series Buffy the Vampire Slayer. If you haven't listened to our first episode discussing seasons 1 through 4, definitely check that out on our SoundCloud and Patreon page. And if you have, let's jump back in to season 5.
Okay. So, season 5, I'll let you start because I know you have a lot of feelings.
Girl, I have so many feelings. I have more feelings than like 20 teenage girls right now about this about this season. Overflowing with feelings. So there are some major things that happen in season 5. Season 5, we are introduced to Buffy's sister, someone we never heard of from seasons 1 through 4, who just popped up out of the blue. And everyone, except the fans, of course, remember this person perfectly. It turns out that this person, her sister Dawn, is a key that a demon named Glory needs. And then later in the season, Buffy sacrifices herself to save Dawn. So that's the recap of what happens on season 5.
Buffy ends up sacrificing her life for this very new person that we
Very
don't know.
new. Right. So this is why I have so many feelings about season 5. Season 5, honestly, for me, indisputably, was where the show started to go downhill. Now, Alex and I both had a lot of things about season 4 that we didn't like, but the show very much still felt like Buffy. And in season 5, that shifted radically. We are introduced to a new character, not a recurring character, not a supporting character, but someone who is presented as someone who's supposed to be part of the main cast. So what happens is when Dawn, the key that this demon needs, is placed in this dimension, memories of her and a life with her are pushed into Buffy's mind and the lives of everyone Buffy knows and has ever met. So, as far as everyone is concerned, Buffy is an older sister, not an only child. And what the reason why this feels like such a betrayal as a viewer is because while I hate the term homewrecker and it's not applicable in any other context, I feel like it's very applicable here. Like Dawn
You're
just
like,
showed up
Dawn is a
and
home wrecker.
she is. She's a homewrecker. She just showed up and ruined our family dynamic. We didn't ask for her. No one invited her. She just showed up here. And so to introduce a character, force the audience to feel for her and have our protagonist die for her all within one season was a lot. I feel like they were asking a lot from the audience. I was not with it. I was never with it. No amount of great writing made up for this. And this was the first time watching Buffy where I felt like emotions were being forced. We talked about plot and pacing in prior seasons. There really was absolutely nothing they could have done to convince the audience that it was okay for our hero to die for someone who literally just got here.
And you know what? That's real. It's funny because we've had this lot to ask from the audience. And the show does its absolute best to try to get us to love Dawn. but it's just not. It's not happening.
Right, and the problem isn't even Dawn. Dawn is a character that's written fairly well. Michelle Trachtenberg does a great job playing Dawn. The point is, why is she here? And more to the point, why is she worth dying for? Like, legit.
Right. It's just a lot to ask, a character that we've now known for 5 years that we love. Like, we really love Buffy. We love her so much. To to ask the audience to be like, yeah, she's gonna sacrifice it all and risk it all for this person you just met who
Right.
is is fine, but is still also kind of annoying. Um it's a lot to ask for.
And the
Oh,
thing is, I feel like even the concept of the key could have been done without the introduction of this new character. Y'all could have made the
mm,
keys. Y'all could have made the key Xander, like put the energy inside of her, of him. You could have made the key Willow. You could have made the key like Spike, even. Like make the key literally
that's
somebody that we have an attachment to already.
that's true. Like if they had made Xander the key, that would have been more compelling and I think understandable.
Right.
Um,
That's her bestie. Willow and Xander are her people. Her sacrificing her life for them makes total sense.
right. Exactly. That's true. That part would have gone over better and that would have layered and deepened the narrative. That's true. I think I agree with that.
It could have been a
Um,
really good way to mature the character of Xander Harris as well. Like his time being the key makes him like be like less insufferable. I don't know.
that's true. Like that could have given him some sort of grounding and sympathy. Season 5 also marks the sort of beginnings, well, quasi beginnings of Spike's obsession with Buffy that will
Mhm.
later be, I guess, reciprocated, I suppose, in a sense.
Yeah,
It
we use
also,
if you couldn't hear that, that was reciprocated with quote marks. There is a caveat with to
yeah,
that.
there's a quote unquote reciprocated. It also marks the exit of Riley in the most ridiculous way possible.
so
Riley
many
is
of
just ugh.
so much of how character dynamics are handled in season 5 leaves so much to be desired, simply because I feel like the house is just rocked by the entrance of Dawn, and the writers are really trying their best to quote unquote make it work, but then a lot of the characters that we see on the show behave in a way that, with the trajectory they've been given in seasons 1 through 4, is truly out of character.
Yeah, in a sense, Riley doesn't feel so out of character because I think you sort of see his descent from season 4, in that. So how Riley leaves you guys is like Riley like goes to some sort of like vampire den and lets vampires feed off of him, and Riley's and then he just sort of makes all of Buffy's issues about himself and then sort of just gets like really self-absorbed and leaves. And it that never feels so out of left field for me because once Riley finds out that Buffy's sort of first boyfriend is like Angel and Angel is a vampire, and there's even an episode late in season 4 where Angel and Riley confront each other. Um, he he's very preoccupied with he becomes extremely preoccupied with the fact that Buffy dated a vampire, like in a really strange way, in that way that you know just insecure dudes do. Like, why are you insecure over somebody who's just not even here anymore? Like, why are you?
Right.
Even if I still do love him or like I still feel kindly towards him, at the end of the day, he's not here. Like, you
Right.
are.
Like, and here's the thing, even if he was here, at the end of the day, she chose you. It's not like dude can challenge you to a duel at dawn. So, because we know what would like.
They get
So,
into like one little tiff. That's completely at his doing. He's just so ready to like fight Angel, and Angel's like, "Oh my god, what are you doing? Like, why are you here? Like,
right.
Why are we doing this?
They got in one little fight, and Riley got insecure and started letting some vampires feed off
Feed
him.
on
But you know
him.
what? Alex is completely right. This trajectory for him isn't out of left field because it kind of fits in with who Riley is as a person and who Riley is with Buffy. So as a person, Riley is very rigid. He is very by the book, and he is very like that type A conformist type. One of the hallmarks of this type of person is a lot of sexual repression. Then add to that the fact that he has projected so many ideas on what he thinks Angel and Buffy's relationship was and the insecurities he's bringing to the table. It actually makes perfect sense that he would do this.
That's true. And it's horrible because she discusses it with him. She's like, it just didn't work out. Shit happened. And that's just not enough for him. So on the show, when she goes to LA, because she's got to talk to Angel because of like the faith situation, Riley just loses his head for no
Right.
reason. And he can't see the fact that she's not going to LA to deal with Angel. She's going to LA to deal with Faith because
Right.
it's not really, it has nothing to do with Angel really. It's really actually to deal with her Slayer duties. It's about Faith, and he cannot like get in his mind that it's not about Angel.
Right, because why everything's about me and you and to
And
whatever respect Angel. But the thing is, like, more than the fact that she's doing her Slayer duties, for however brief a period, Angel, I mean, Buffy and Faith had a bond, they had a connection, they were friends.
right. And
Like,
they're
so you can't just tell her not to go help her fellow Slayer.
and not even like help, but Faith is, because in that season, just to sort of remind you guys about season 4, Faith had just been to Sunnydale and like fucked shit up, and she got away with it, right?
Mhm.
So Buffy's going there to, in her mind, she's going there to put down a rogue Slayer, to put down someone who is responsible for disrupting her life, disrupting her friends' lives, and almost you know killing everybody in Sunnydale. It has nothing. He's just bringing stuff to it that's not even there.
Yeah, like, and she says, "I'm going to LA for Faith," and Riley hears Angel and I have an orgy planned,
Right.
basically. Like,
She's like, I gotta go to LA to deal with Faith. He's like, no, y'all are gonna fuck. Like,
right, and like. This is the thing. This is what bugs me. Like, Riley is absolutely the type of guy that would like seek out a virgin because the thought of you ever being with anyone ever makes him insecure. Because Angel is literally the only boyfriend she had before him. Like, bro,
only
what
one.
the fuck even?
And they fucked once. Y'all fuck all the time. Like, what are you
Right.
doing? Stop this.
And the aftermath of the sex isn't something she can forget. Like, even if she tried, she can't forget that he became a soulless monster who terrorized her family for months after they
Right?
fucked. I don't
It's
think she's gonna forget that.
right. It's just like they've just been through a lot together. You gotta understand. Like, and it's just you gotta move on. Nobody can help you through this but you. And then Xander doesn't make it any better because oh my god, like Xander, of course, because Xander is like impotent male rage, like the symbol of impotent male rage. Xander's like, yeah, Buffy, she's going to LA. I know she said she's going for Faith, but who knows? She might be fucking Angel. Who knows? Who knows? We don't know. I guess if people start to die, we'll know she fucked Angel. And he's there like inserting all of that into Riley's head. And it's like, can y'all just
Well, I'll give Xander some credit too. Like, Riley already have these thoughts, Xander or no Xander. But the thing about Xander is, and I did compare Riley and Xander on the last episode, they are so much alike. Obviously Riley is more handsome, he's more stable, and he's in the military, but they are the same type of insecure, territorial man. It's
Xander's
ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
and we'll come back to this when we talk about season 6. about
Girl.
Xander being a blueprint for like all the all the things that all these boys are doing that are wrong. Um,
Right.
but
Oh, the other thing that happens in season 5 as well, a huge thing actually, is that
huge.
Buffy's mom gets ill and she dies in that season.
I was just about to say probably season 5 episode 16, the body, is probably one of the most iconic episodes in the history of the show's run. It's the episode that won the show an Emmy, which was a huge deal at the time because fantasy and sci-fi, like the genre, was still very much looked down upon as a genre, and the show itself being a teen show for teen girls was very looked down upon and sort of
Hmm.
derided. But the body, pushed through all of that, and it's one of it's just an amazing episode of television.
Hmm.
So something that we said earlier in the last podcast is one of the things that Buffy does that's amazing is that the show is very aware of itself, and it's aware of its history, and it's aware of its characters. This is on full display during the body. We see all these callbacks to way early seasons 1 and 2 and 3 of Buffy's mom, Joyce, and the character, and how each character in the series related to her somehow. It's just really phenomenal to watch. It's definitely an episode that shows you why this show is and continues to be so influential to so many writers and creators, because it really was the blueprint in a lot of ways for so many things.
Hmm. I completely agree. Now, Joyce Summers was always not even a supporting character, but a recurring character on Buffy. And we see her less and less as Buffy gets older, especially once she starts college. But she was also kind of a cornerstone character. Both Joyce and Giles were like the parental figures, the kind of cornerstones in Buffy's life. In season 5, she loses one of them, but later in season 6, she loses Giles for the most part as well, and he becomes a recurring character instead of a part of the main cast. And so, season 5 is where we see the writers essentially forcing Buffy to become an adult
Right.
and take on adult responsibilities.
It's so grounding, and it has such gravity because for the most part we've seen this character take on these huge responsibilities in terms of saving the world and having this huge connection to her duties as a slayer within the context of the show, and all these fantastical elements. So to bring in this very grounded, very real life element to this character, um, who's so used to dealing with so many hard things. What's also so great about it that we also talk about that other shows don't do is that the show gives it weight. Joyce doesn't just die and then it's like, okay, she's dead, we're moving on. Joyce dies and the show sits with it very much. So everyone is affected. We spend a whole hour going over how each character is affected. We as an audience feel this grief in a way that's profound and echoes through the rest of season 5.
Right. Like I said, Joyce wasn't even part of the supporting cast. She was a recurring character. She was on a few episodes every season, but that was enough to make us love her. That was enough to cement her relationship with her daughter in our minds. And so when Buffy lost her, we felt like we lost her. We had a chance to properly sit with the grief, to mourn this character who meant something to our protagonist and therefore meant something to us. Now, this is significant. We didn't develop feelings for Joyce outside of what we felt for Buffy, but we are able to feel for Buffy strongly enough that when her mother dies, like it's like going to a friend's family member's funeral. You can be there with them and sit with them and understand that this family is grieving, even if you don't know that person who's in the casket well. And we see little snatches of Joyce throughout the rest of the series, whenever Buffy thinks of her and we harken back to her relationship with Joyce, Joyce doesn't just die and then completely disappear from their lexicon or from, you know, the show's history and the show's foundation. Like her footprint is very much present, which I love.
Mm-hmm. And we see how, and it's also a huge meditation on just grief in general. You know, we see how each person deals with losing Joyce, which I don't think I can stress enough. I mean, even Angel comes back because of Joyce's death. Like, that's how monumentous it is, you know. Um, in a way, I guess, cementing his sort of status in the show and
Mhm.
in Buffy's life. Um, so, yeah, a huge, huge thing.
So
So,
what do we think of it? What do we think of season 5? Is it good? Is it bad? Or is it basic?
you know, when it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's bad. I just want to say, I think it's just basic. I think it gets, because because the standout episodes of this season do stand out so wonderfully. So I would say the iconic episodes of season 5 are episode 1, Buffy versus Dracula, um, episode 7, Fool for Love, where we learn how Spike killed the 2 other Slayers.
Mhm.
It was a great episode. Um,
That was my personal favorite.
right. And episode 16, The Body, I also think is a truly excellent episode.
Right. I won't say the body is my favorite because of the subject matter, but writing wise
Writing
and
wise,
acting wise,
mm,
it's unparalleled.
it's unparalleled. So because
Um,
those episodes are so strong, but because the rest of the season is uneven, it gets a basic in my book.
yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. So I'm gonna say overall the season was basic, but it did have some good highlights. So I will talk about what my personal highlights were. I liked the way that Joyce's death was handled, although I didn't like the fact that Joyce died, but this person who just showed up is still alive. I really love the handling of the relationship between Glory and Ben. Season 5 is really basic, but it did have some highlights. I really enjoy the emergence of Dark Willow. So in this season, Willow really starts dabbling in some really dark witchcraft, and I promise you, this character arc is probably the one thing that's saving season 5.
Right. That's true. The beginnings of the emergence of Dark Willow that carries into season 6 and 7.
I don't think it's as basic as season 7, but it's pretty basic.
Okay, now season 6.
All right, let's get into it. Season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Lex has a lot of feelings. So before she discusses those feelings, we're gonna do a recap of everything that happens. In season 6, here are the major highlights. Giles leaves Sunnydale. Giles becomes a recurring character. Buffy's friends use a spell to resurrect her, believing that she was in hell, and so they bring her back. And then Buffy has to adjust to basically a bastardized version of Joyce's life, where she is a single woman caring for herself and a teenage girl. Read Dawn. Buffy and Spike enter into a sexual relationship, and Dark Willow reaches her peak. So these are the highlights of season 6, but we have a lot of thoughts about it. Alex, tell me your thoughts.
This is how you feel about season 5, I think is how I feel about season 6. It's just so much. Okay, so to reiterate what Em said, the big sort of plot line that happens here with our protagonist is that the Scooby Gang drags Buffy back from the dead using a spell, believing that she is wasting away. in a hell dimension when in truth they rip her out of heaven, which we find out later in this season. Uh, and okay, so season 6 is actually fair. It's an infamous season because season 6 is essentially when Marty Noxon was pretty much in charge of the show. Joss Whedon was busy doing Angel. He was also doing Firefly, and he was, I think gearing up to do Dollhouse. So Marty Noxon is sort of in charge. This is like all her, and there's lots of like fan resentment because like the show gets extremely dark in this season. Buffy as a protagonist gets very, very dark and self-destructive, and I just and Marty Noxon takes a lot of the heat for that. Now, I will say I understand what Marty was trying to do. Like I really do. I get it. I understand what she was trying to make happen. Was it successful? Do I feel I don't know. All I know is that even in this rewatch, it's horrible to watch. It's just I did not like have any sort of like fun or levity like watching this season back. Like I just there's no joy. There's just no it was horrible. And the spike
The-
and the Spike and Buffy relationship, you guys, is horrible. Like this is people who romanticize that relationship, like we need to have a long talk. So
Seriously.
it's funny because Em and I were talking about this. So there's this interview on Vulture with Emily Newsombaum, who sort of pioneered like TV criticism. And in the interview, they talk about this concept of the bad fan. And the bad fan is somebody who I think you were trying to describe, but the essentially like the definition of the bad fan is like the fan that doesn't understand like what the show is trying to do. So
Right.
like they think that like Walter White is like the hero. Like not that he's an anti-hero, not that he's like a shitty person who absolutely deserves to die, but they're like, Walter White was just a good guy, you guys, like underneath. Like
Right.
they're the fan who like did you ever watch You on Netflix,
Yeah, I did. The bad
Yeah.
fan is the one who thinks that Joe Goldberg is a hero and a romantic guy.
Okay,
They're that
exactly.
person.
They're that person. So you guys, and so I will say, like you guys, and this is going to be an extremely controversial opinion, and I'm prepared for that. I'm okay with that. But people who romanticize that Buffy Spike relationship in season 6 and going forward, are bad fans. Like they just are. Like I don't know how you can like watch that and be like, oh yeah, girl, like that's a guy who really loves you. Like I don't understand how you can
Right.
watch season 5 and see like his like really scary like weird obsession with her, and then watch her sort of like hate herself every moment like having
Mhm.
sex with him in season 6. Like she's constantly telling how she like hates herself every time they have sex, and then you're just like, like they're in love. Like
Right. Here's the thing about bad fans though. I think bad fans are a byproduct of a culture where toxic misogyny and toxic masculinity become so normalized that certain toxic traits seem endearing or romantic or are constantly portrayed as such, and so the audience internalizes them in that way. Now Alex says she understands what Marty was trying to do in this season. As far as I'm concerned, she did those things. I
right.
see what she did and I appreciate what she did because
Same.
here's the thing. So going back to where Buffy's friends resurrect her, let's keep two things in mind. Well, let's keep three things in mind. They did not consult her. There was a witch among them, and nobody did a seance or broke out the Ouija board. They just brought her back without her
Right. They
consent.
don't even ask. They don't even try to check, because they don't check to see, she's not Angel. Like it's not like Buffy lived this horrible, horrific life and like killed a bunch of people. And so, hell was always her destiny. Like was a good person and saved the world 20 billion times. Of course she's going to heaven. Like,
right. If heaven is real, she's there. And if she's not there, I'm not trying to go there either.
So just really had a commitment to her calling and her duty and did what she was supposed to do.
Right. The second thing is that now this is a hole that the writers could have closed, but they didn't. Back in season 1, where Buffy dies for literal minutes and before Xander brings her back at the hands of the Master, this is enough to activate Kendra. But for some reason, Buffy is gone for months and another Slayer was not activated, or if they got and go looking for her. Are you
right?
Serious?
That's so true. That's so real. You guys just left it up to the Buffy bot, and nobody called. I mean, you buried her. Nobody called Giles and was like, "Hey, can you talk to the Watchers counselor and like do like a thing and figure out where the other Slayer is so she can come and be here?"
Right. Like Buffy's dead for 2 minutes. Boom, Kendra. Kendra's dead for like a day. Boom, Faith.
Faith.
Like,
come on, you guys. Like, get real.
And here's the thing. Not only was it ridiculous to assume she was in hell, but with the appropriate assumption that she is in heaven, why would you steal her sunshine? That was a Len reference. But why would you do that? Why would you bring her back here? Why would you bring her back here? What kind of shitty friends are you?
What kind of shitty friends are you? Oh, just friends who don't want you to win. And I mean, I guess I get it for the sake of the narrative. Like the show was going on, like she had to come back, but my God, pull it together.
As far as I'm concerned, them bringing her back had nothing to do with thinking she was in hell and everything to do with the fact that her friends didn't want to let go. They weren't ready to appropriately grieve. So they did this and convinced themselves that they were doing it for the good of the world.
Right. These are all things that are real. This is all real. So she comes back and she is appropriately, not wanting to be here. Like she tries to kill herself again. From jump, she's like, "Oh no, this is not what I'm trying to do." But she doesn't, and she stays. It just doesn't go well. It just doesn't.
It doesn't.
In the context of everything, it's great. It makes a lot of sense. Marty Noxon did that, and it all makes sense. In fact, I even think it's really brilliant and really smart because in a way, it's sort of it's a revert to me at least. It's a reverse of Angel's plot in like season 3. Angel is tossed back from hell. Buffy's ripped out of heaven. Angel is like struggling to sort of like get, reacclimated. Buffy is struggling to get reacclimated. And instead of Buffy finding this sort of other Buffy like figure and I guess Buffy's trying to find herself in someone, and that she's looking for someone to like really help her because she's in a lot of pain in the same way Angel was like in season 3, like a lot of pain. Instead, she just gets Spike, who is completely self-serving and just takes advantage of her in like an extremely vulnerable moment. And I think in that, like narratively, having like those same sort of echoes is really brilliant. And the fact that Spike is a vampire and like they have this really destructive relationship, and then in season 3, Angel is a vampire, but Buffy and Angel sort of have this they sort of heal from everything that happened in the back half of season 2 to have that sort of narrative in a sense replay itself in season 6, but be very like ugly and a perversion of that season 3 narrative, I think is actually really smart and brilliant. And it's why I think this show is unmatched in a way, because I don't know that like another show would like redo those things, like would even think to like have that play out in such a way. But oh gosh, it's horrible. It's horrible to watch.
So this is Alex's theory about why Buffy and Spike were put together in season 6. My theory is this, that obviously when Buffy returns from heaven, she's depressed and she is suicidal. And for all that she's gone through, I would say probably the end of season 2 was the closest we'd ever come to seeing Buffy this down. And she really can't handle it after having enjoyed heaven. And so, this, in a similar way that some suicidal people might engage in self harm, like via cutting, things like that, I feel like her relationship with Spike is like that. This is a way of her self harming. Buffy understands that the relationship, I shudder to even call it a relationship. Like she knows that their sexual encounters are wrong and that they're bad for her, but she does it anyway because this is just how badly she feels. And I think it's a good way of delving into our protagonist's depression without, being an after school special on mental health, I guess. And I think it's really good that the partner that she ended up being with at the lowest point in her life was the worst possible person that she could be with. It really highlights how she's suffering, how she's actively making bad choices. And later on in the season, when, she's in her right mind again, she abruptly cuts off the relationship as she should have. Like, she's like, it was really fucked up of me to even be with you because you're like beneath me. And she says this quote, "You're beneath me." And she's like, I'm not engaging in this anymore. It's done. And it was kind of amazing to see that a character know that she made a string of bad decisions and just be like, I refuse. I'm done. It's the end. I'm gonna move on to my best life now, where as good as it can be now that I'm not in heaven.
Right. Like really, and then also really just taking this self responsibility to heal herself. She's like, well, I have to, I think, like you said, she's self harming, and I do think she's self harming, but she's, I also think she very much is like she's crying out for help, and
Yes.
Spike is never going to help her, and because he is not interested in that because if she heals herself, this sort of thing stops. So
Exactly. He can only have Buffy at her lowest. The
at her
best version
lowest,
of her could never be interested in him, and he understands this intrinsically.
he
So
does.
he never wants her to be, well, be all that she can be, for lack of a better word, because that person would never want him.
And when you watch the whole series, like his attempted rape makes so much sense. Like that episode, it just because that is where it was always leading. You made this point that I loved in the last episode, um, that I'm gonna bring up again because it was so, I think, insightful in that you can't love a bad person into a good one. That doesn't exist. They have to they have to begin that way. It has to be, there has to be some sort of like positivity or blossoming of goodness from the beginning. And I think, and I just love that so much. I think I'm just repeating it. And for Spike, and there is none. There is no good. There's nothing. It's not there. It doesn't exist.
Spike can come to being a quote unquote good person is basically cosplaying good. He can like sort of cosplay at what he thinks good behavior is, but it's always with some sort of ulterior motive or hidden agenda. And the thing about Spike is, as you say, that attempted rape of Buffy in season 6, that's where their sexual encounters were always heading, because he doesn't love Buffy so much as he wants to possess her.
Right. Because if he really loved her, if he really could feel that, um or if he could really, feel that for her, he would be clear enough to, and this is something that we talk about now, I think as a society and public sphere, he would recognize that she was in a dark place and he would say, you know what? This isn't, we can't do this right now. Like, I understand that you want to, but like, you're not in the right headspace for this. And, and you need help. He would,
Right.
he would have helped her instead of just, doing what he did. And this is in like
This
I
is
said,
the
this is
thing
what we
that's
talked
interesting.
about.
This is what's interesting too, because if Spike had helped her through that situation, it's very possible that she could have been with Spike.
Right.
If
I
Spike
would
had taken a step back and be like, you know what, I've been through this, I've lived through this, and I'm gonna help you through your grief back into readjusting to this life every step of the way, she could have loved him or at the very least respected him, but she never did either. She
but she,
couldn't
she
because he's the
couldn't.
way he is.
And I hate this. And like I said, I agree. I think the season's brilliantly done. I think for the reasons you said, for my theory that I still think is very valid. Um uh and also for the listeners, this is why Angel like always will always beat Spike, because like Angel could at least step back and like understand that like what an action that he was about to take, and not like Angelus, but like, you know, Angel with the soul. Angel could always
Obviously. Yeah, definitely
obviously
not Angelus.
no, definitely not Angelus. But Angel could always step back and understand that an action he was about to take was going to harm Buffy in some way, and then like make an active choice not to do that thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like he could always like, even their breakup, it's very much he breaks up with her because he's like, yeah, you deserve to go to college. You deserve to have mimosas at 12. Like you should move on with your life. Like, we love each other, I love you, that's real, but there's more for you, and it's selfish of me to keep trying to possess you. Like, it doesn't make any sense, it's not good for you. And like
Mhm.
he makes the selfless decision. It's a selfless decision.
Right, because Angel never wanted to possess her. He wanted to share a life with her, and
With
he
her.
realized that her being immortal and the Slayer, that was just not attainable. It's not
It's not
achievable goal.
right. It's not real. It's never gonna happen. He can't take her out to brunch.
Can't take her out to brunch. Can't take her out to the beach in the middle of the day. Like this, he can't. He'll never see her in natural sunlight. That's it.
It's like, you know, vitamin D is important. Um,
Right. And what is she gonna do? What's gonna happen? You know, long term, like obviously Angel's a good guy, but when she starts looking more like Joyce, people are gonna talk. Why her boyfriend's so young?
wrong. It's
Um,
like, they're gonna be like, so this is different. But yeah, that's why Angel is always superior. But um
I honestly don't like any of the choices that Buffy was given, including Angel, because it just wasn't like an attainable, sustainable relationship long term. Riley was a whiny little insecure baby, and Spike was a whiny little insecure baby with super strength and no soul. Like I'm just I know
no, but
no.
it's funny. You were saying that like Buffy's just like a no man, no problem type bitch. And you're right. You were right. I reflected on it and I was like, yeah, that's true. That
Unnecessary drama into her life. Some they willingly brought that drama, and some like that drama was just an intrinsic part of them. But these men were useless.
it's how it was always gonna be, no matter what. Like, and it's how it's gotta be. So if I had to talk about the iconic episodes of season 6, I would definitely say bargaining part 1 and part 2, episode 1 and episode 2. Episode 7, once more feeling, the very famous musical episode. I just blame this season for so many things.
No, hashtag Riverdale musicals.
Oh gosh, I hate it. Episode 16, Hell's Bells, and episode 20, Villains, which was, Dark Willow, Dark Willow.
That really
Um,
was one of the highlights of this season. Allison Hannigan did that. Like, she'd always put a lot into this character, but watching Willow's metamorphosis was truly a thing of nightmarish beauty. It was amazing. Our villains this season were actually all mortal. They were a group called the Trio, which was Jonathan, Warren, and Andrew, and they were basically who Xander would have been if he'd never met Buffy.
basically. I feel like you could just tie all of this back to Xander. Spike is who Xander would be if he were like hot and had an amazing body. Because shout out to James Marsters. Like James Marsters, you can always hold on to season 6. It's like
He was working on his fitness for real.
you look amazing. You were
Right.
eating nothing but salmon and like chicken breast and broccoli,
I
and it
mean,
shows.
real talk, human Spike, aka William, was Xander. He was 1700s Xander. What makes a trio dangerous is because they don't have any supernatural abilities. They were our first pop cultural, like, I don't want to say the first, but like the most iconic group of people that we could refer to by the modern day term incels. That's what they were.
Exactly, because there's this episode called Dead Things, episode 13, and the episode is essentially the trio kidnaps, I want to say Warren. Yeah, Warren's ex girlfriend. They kidnap her and they glamour her into being their slave, and they essentially just rape her because they dress her up in like this French made like hypersexual costume, and they order her around and make her their slave. Warren, he sexually assaults her because she's not in her right mind, right? And
Right.
when they meet her, she's even actively trying to give him the brush off. She's like, "Get away from me! Like, I don't want to talk to you." And they glamour her and put her out of her wrong mind to make her do all this stuff. So essentially, when she's in the costume and Warren's kissing her and stuff, she starts to come back to herself, and the glamour wears off, and she appropriately freaks out and bests them, and they end up killing her accidentally, and they make it and they to the point where they have to conjure a thing to make Buffy think that she killed them, that to make Buffy think that she killed her and not them, but they're the ones that kill her. And they are absolutely, like you said, they're incels. They're the first sort of coming of that.
Right, definitely are one of the earliest and still one of the best portrayals of incels, right down to their glamoring and rape of Warren's girlfriend. Because understand, they didn't just grab this girl and force themselves upon her. They glamored her, and in their minds, this makes it not rape. It still is very
Right.
much rape, but as far as they're concerned, it's not, because the part of her that's literally under their control can't say no. And apparently, not being able to say no sounds like yes when you're a rapist.
Right. And it's a very smart episode, and it's a very smart season, which is why I'm just like, yes, Marty, like, girl, you did that. And it's why, like, I don't ever want to hear people disrespect Marty Noxon, because I get it. Like, she was really trying to teach y'all something. She was trying to like deepen this show, and y'all just missed it. Like, people just missed
Yeah.
it.
I don't want to hear the slander either,
Oh my
because at the end of
God.
the day, I feel like season 6 was truly a relief from season 5, and she never ruined the show so badly by introducing a character who was wholly unnecessary. So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
Like, well, you know what? She's not responsible for Dawn, so
No, exactly. Did she bring Dawn to the show? No, then shut your mouth.
you want so, do you want to talk a little bit about episode 16, Hell's Bells, where Xander stands up Anya? Anya's devastated, but I remember watching that episode and feeling like, girl, he saved you. Like, you don't understand, because
Yeah, she dodged a bullet,
you
because
dodged
here's
a
the
bullet,
thing.
babe.
Like, there's only one or two reasons why he would have left: because he was insecure, a la Xander Harris, or because she gave like this whack ass dude a chance, and then he started feeling himself and thinking he could do better. And this is one of two things that happens when you date a Xander. He's
Right.
gonna start thinking that because you gave him a chance, he's too good for you, or he's gonna be terrified of messing it up and therefore create some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy where he sabotages the relationship.
Right. And to give a little context to the episode 16, Hell's Bells, is Xander and Anya's wedding day. And what happens is Zan- Anya Anya's past as a vengeance demon sort of comes to interfere in her wedding, in that one of the people she cursed comes back and sort of implants these fake visions of the future into Xander's mind of and these are completely fake. They're completely fake, by the way. It's just her a demon that she'd cursed or something coming back and saying, "Oh, if you marry Anya, this is your future." And the visions are essentially, it's Xander and he's disrespecting her, and he's really making their life difficult, and they bicker and yell at each other, and the marriage is essentially really bad. And
Basically, he imagined that he and Anya become his parents.
yes, that become his parents. And the thing of it is that that would have never gotten to him unless he really realized like that is, who he is. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
if he knew that he was always going to love and respect her, if he would always, rally when he was in a tight spot, like that stuff would have never you could have never ever you know overcome him with that kind of a thing, if
Right.
he had
And
really
here's
vowed in his heart to never be like his father.
Right. And here's the thing about Xander. So Xander is portrayed really well by the actor Nicholas Brendan. I have nothing to say about his acting. I think he played the role well. The issue I have with Xander as a character is that out of all the characters, and this includes characters that show up much later, like Anya and Dawn, and even Spike, when he leaves to go to Angel, Xander makes almost no real growth as a person.
He doesn't. He really
Like
doesn't.
none. All he manages to do was somehow convince Cordelia to date him and then somehow convince Anya that she loved him by literally being himself. He was still the same type of insecure, needy person that he'd always been. He just found people that were willing to put up with it. And then he shot himself in the foot. It's like, Xander, first of all, nobody gets unlimited chances at happiness and at love, but you especially are annoying as fuck. You need to put the ring on this girl and get married.
Right. And I feel like I don't know that you can stress just how ridiculous Xander is throughout all of the seasons. We're talking about someone who, in the first season, he's like, "Oh, Buffy, like, I love you." And she goes, "Well, no, I just, we're friends. That's all I feel towards you." And then from that moment on, even continues to one periodically bring it up, even though she has like said, "I do not feel this way about you," and then two, tries to then control her sexually and control who she dates. I
I
mean,
was gonna say there's a really great episode on season one where the teacher's pet episode where it's a teacher's pet. It's some episode where she has a date with a guy named Owen, and Xander shows up at her house, basically telling her what lipsticks not to wear and what clothes not to wear, and that she's looking
right.
sexy, like he's her dad or something.
Something. And then, when she starts to date Angel, I mean, consistently undermining him and undermining Buffy's feelings and undermining just, I mean, to the point where he almost sabotages. Um, he's the reason that Buffy ends up sending Angel to hell, because he doesn't communicate that Willow is working on restoring his soul, and that Buffy just needs to keep Angel busy. He's just, he doesn't tell her. I mean, consistently. And then not only doing this to Buffy, but doing it to Willow, even though
Right.
Willow had already expressed her interest in him and he brushed her off. The minute Willow gets with Oz, suddenly out of nowhere, he's like, well, he also wants to control like Willow's like dress and how she's acting, and like suddenly he's in love with her. It is like, oh my god,
Regards to
possessive.
Willow, it was so manipulative because they both had partners. Not only was she with Oz, he was with Cordelia, and he kind of lured her into, them cheating together because the fact that some other person claimed her as his girlfriend made her desirable now.
Right, exactly. And even when they sort of start to have feelings for each other, and Willow's like, no, I'm with Oz, he could have very easily been like, he's the one that's like, he's the one that sort of eggs her on and like manipulates her, like, I think, warm feelings towards him. And even
Hmm.
when, you know, they cheat together and they kiss, Oz forgives Willow, right?
Right.
And
Because I think Oz can see very clearly what we see. If there's one thing that that character has, it's a lot of insight and understanding. Like he's very non-judgmental, and I think this allows him to see people clearly, not just what projections onto them.
right. And Oz forgives Willow. Cordelia doesn't forgive Xander. And then he holds like resentment over it. Like what?
Right. Like
He
I'm gonna cheat on you and I get to dictate how you feel about it too.
Yeah. And it's like I get to, you have to be miserable because I'm still miserable, even though
And can
your
you
partner
imagine,
forgave
girl?
you.
Can you imagine being a Cordelia, giving a Xander a chance, and then he has the audacity to cheat on you?
Like the audacity.
The
Like,
fucking audacity. But yeah, so Xander had a lot of issues, and it really pained me that he was such an iconic part of the show and was part of the main cast from beginning to end with having no character growth. And I think if more than anything else on the show, and I'm anything with a capital A, more than anything else, his inclusion in Buffy's life undermines her as a heroine. Just the fact that she puts up with Xander kind of reinforces the very unhealthy narrative that he is a nice guy when he's anything but.
yeah, Xander's definitely like a capital N nice guy TM, in that like he's not
Right.
really nice. I I only say that I guess I only think his inclusion in the narrative is right, in that I feel like we've all had that person in our lives, and we've all just like kept that person in our lives. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you really don't put up with foolishness.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
like,
I don't. Here's the thing, like I understand that I have had friends like this, but I grew out of them. And a character like Buffy is someone that can learn from previous mistakes and step back from certain situations. She did it during her breakup with Angel. She eventually accepted the situation in regards to Riley, and she did it after engaging in that unhealthy relationship with Spike. She can see toxicity in front of her, but for some reason, because Xander is less powerful and as thus far less violent than these other very insecure toxic men, it's like she kind of has blinders on, or maybe the fact that he's friends with Willow kind of neutralizes the impact of his toxic behavior. But he's a really toxic person.
he sucks. That's it. That's all I've got. He sucks.
And he did Anya a big favor, like high key. He did that girl a favor by not
He
marrying
did.
her.
He absolutely did. Um
Dark Willow was on and poppin', season 6, and I would want to say the one of the big takeaways from, and again, this is something they do with Xander a lot. Like he doesn't change, he doesn't grow, but every once in a while he's useful, so we put up with him. He was useful when he saved Buffy's life after the Master killed her, and he's useful in at the end of season 6 where his love literally stops Willow from bringing on the apocalypse.
and I suppose it's appropriate for him to be the one to stop her. But
Mhm.
yikes.
Dark Willow was really on one, and a little context there. Dark Willow emerged as a result of Willow's girlfriend Tara being killed by Warren, one third of the trio, when a stray bullet that he fired kills Tara. This is significant because Warren is just an angry incel with a gun, and Tara is a very powerful natural born witch. But this goes to show you that there's really nothing more dangerous in the world than an entitled man with a gun.
I think one of the greatest things about Buffy is that uh Buffy kind of hates guns. I don't know if we've talked about this. Maybe you already have. But we Buffy hates gun. The show is very much like has a love of action, but every time a gun appears, Buffy is sort of like, ugh, I don't need this. So the fact that Warren like appears and causes this huge rift and really cements his villainhood by just being another unstable white boy with a gun, I think is very appropriate.
I think so too. And I think the fact that the writers of Buffy and Buffy as a character don't really fuck with guns like that is one of the reasons why the show has aged as well as it has, because it really
Definitely.
does make a huge commentary about the type of men that have an affinity for guns, not just guns themselves, but the type of people who gravitate to guns as a first resort. Like, these are the type of people we're dealing with: insecure people, entitled people, people that are violent towards women. And this has not stopped being true.
Right. That has not under any circumstances stopped being true. I think there are a lot of really amazing things happening in season 6. I think, like I said, no Marty Noxon slander. I hear you disrespect Marty Noxon in the streets. Like, we gonna have like some real serious conversations. I hear you try to disrespect her, and like we gonna talk. But at the same time, I think that Buffy Spike narrative and like the romanticization of it, I think it's the blueprint of so many like gross, toxic narratives and relationships that come after it in television and media. We'll discuss later.
Yeah, we will definitely
um,
be discussing
discussing
those.
those. I definitely see this season as like the blueprint of those. That makes me just like, oh gosh. So I don't know. I guess it's basic. I don't I think I'm putting it in, I want to say part bad, part basic. Cause like I said,
Okay.
I understand, like I get it. Like I really, and I think there are some really wonderful, really brilliant ideas and things that are being executed. I don't know.
Mm.
I think I'm inconclusive.
All right. So this is where we have very different opinions. I actually thought season 6 was very good.
Mm,
Um, I liked it just as much, if not a little bit better, than season 4. Season 5 and 7 were like the worst to me and the most forgettable. I like season 6 for a lot of reasons, even though I can admit that Alex is right, that I feel like this is when audiences, and as a byproduct, writers started glorifying and glamorizing toxic relationships on screen. I can say unequivocally that Marty Noxon and the writers of season 6 were not doing that. Buffy and Spike's relationship was toxic. They made it clear that Buffy thought it was toxic.
mm,
Buffy ended it in a very unambiguous fashion. No revolving door, no back and forth. When Buffy comes to her senses and Buffy comes back to herself, her values, and who she is, that relationship ends. It served its purpose only for being a toxic means of escape and self harm for her. So if it was a blueprint for those relationships, it absolutely wasn't her intention. And
that's
for that
true.
reason, I will say that this season was good. I will say, though, with a little asterisk, I think that there's a certain level of social awareness and emotional maturity needed to understand this season, because it could easily be taken left by someone who's quote unquote a bad viewer or bad audience and
A
doesn't
bad fan,
understand
yeah.
the narrative. Like, if you're a bad fan, you're not going to understand why Spike and Buffy are at odds the way they are at odds. You're just going to think Buffy's being a bitch who rejected a man who loved her, when that's not the case at all. He was a possessive, toxic asshole. You're not going to understand the way that the trio were set up as basically an antithesis to autonomy, to women's autonomy. You're just going to think that, oh, they're just, these guys that became bad because they couldn't get dates. You have
Right.
to have a level of matureness to enter enter season 6 to begin with. Season 6 can't teach you. It can only reinform what you should know.
And what you should know. And also points off because like season 6 is where we get Once More with Feeling, which is like the beginning of all these dumb musical episodes that I hate. I hate them. Like, your actors can't sing. They can't sing. Don't make them sing. My God, please. Like,
Even if they can sing, should they sing? Because these original numbers are bad.
Like, should they? Like, the only person that has like a good number in Once More with Feeling is like the demon, and you can't convince me that he's not black. And like, under all that makeup,
you already know.
You already know. Like, I already know that he's black. I already know that he's trained. I already know that like he probably is like some recording artist. Like, y'all don't come to me with foolishness. Like,
right.
Everybody's so bad. Even Giles. Even Giles, who like Anthony Stewart Head made his career like on West End for a bit. That's like London's version of Broadway. Like, even him, I'm cold. I'm left very cold. I'm just like, is this necessary? Are we doing this? Do we have to?
Here's my thing. I feel like everybody does a musical number to try to prove that they can sing, but that's not what we tuned in for. I could have watched Glee for that.
And like,
I'm not saying I'm a Glee stan. I'm saying when you watch Glee, you signed up for that.
You know what? Here if because I know that's also another controversial opinion. You know what? I would be happy with musical episodes if like they were lip syncing, if they were just lip syncs. You know what?
Me too, because it's super campy.
It's super campy. I think it's fun. RuPaul's Drag Race reintroduced lip syncing into the mainstream. More lip syncing to the creators of America.
Right. And I feel like these musical numbers, the thing that I just hate is that it's literally like a 40-minute trying too hard. Like, I already know you're acting. I know I'm watching a dramatization and a fiction, but when you throw in the musical numbers, you can only expect me to suspend belief so much. I'm sorry.
So much. I'm sorry. It's like, oh gosh.
Like, and it's this reminded that I'm watching a TV show.
Oh gosh. Okay. Season 7.
Season 7 was the final season of Buffy.
Final season of Buffy, the end of an era.
The end of an era, truly. So season 7 had some highlights. Sunnydale High was rebuilt. Now, if you guys remember, the school was literally blown up at the end of season 3. Spike is managed to get himself a soul, and he regrets having a soul now. And
it's driving him crazy, right?
Right. It's literally driving him crazy because as much as he didn't want to admit it to himself, part of the reason why he loved being a vampire was because he just has so many freaking feelings and doesn't know how to handle them all. The Watchers Council is destroyed. Mm-hmm. And Buffy, thanks to Willow, with Willow's help, now has an army of slayers to help her. So jump in, Alex. What do you think of season 7?
Oh, season 7. Like you said, season 7 is so forgettable. The only main thing I feel like I took away from season 7 was another Black person that's written terribly.
Yeah.
In Nikki Wood's son. It's supposed to be the Slayer Spike killed. It's his son. It's her son.
Right. So back in season 6, we learned that Spike had killed a Slayer, a Black Slayer, on a subway in New York, and that long black leather coat that he wears is actually a souvenir from the slave that he killed, which definitely really puts a lot of more complexity into his character, because it fits in so well with this narrative of this man who wants to possess.
Something I mean and that's why we actually named it one of the iconic episodes. But he even says that Slayer, when he's talking to Buffy about that particular Slayer, he goes, she reminded me a lot of you. He's like, you remind me a lot of her. She had a lot of your style. So Yeah.
Yeah, she absolutely had a lot of Buffy's fighting style, and we kind of see that in the flashback. Now that is done really well, but that's because like literally the only time we see this other black person is when Spike is fighting her and he bests her and he kills her. This season is super forgettable and it's sad because it's the most recent season. But like I remember when I recently rewatched a series for this podcast, that season 5, though I disliked it, was very memorable because of the addition of Dawn. But season 7 was really just, they could have just redone that entire season, to be brutally honest with you.
They could have. There's
Nothing
nothing.
about that season stands out.
Nothing. And it's funny because I think in a lot of ways, I think with episodes like him and episodes like Lessons, the opener, I think it's a response into the darkness of season 6. I think they're really trying to bring back this sort of lighter qualities of the show, but it does not. It just doesn't go over.
And it fails,
And it
there's a
fails.
reason why it fails, because you can transition from the campy to the dark like we did between seasons 1 and 2, but
Mhm.
trying to go in reverse when season 6 was so incredibly dark, fam, what are you doing? What are
What are
you
you
doing?
doing?
Like
You
you didn't even give us a chance. Y'all were straight backpedaling the entire season. And when I talk about holes, one of the biggest holes in Buffy was the fact that Buffy had to be resuscitated because there was no new Slayer in season 6 for whatever reason. But then another huge plot hole is in season 7, where apparently there was a spell where you could activate all the potential Slayers and not leave one girl fighting by herself. Every single night.
every
What
single
the
night. What the
and no,
hell?
nobody. The Watchers Council never sought out any Wiccans or Druids to perform this spell. They've just been letting these girls die one by one.
Oh gosh, it's so unfortunate. The whole thing is so
Like,
unfortunate.
what are you doing? What are
Like,
you
what are we
doing? What are you
doing?
really doing? And it's not like y'all didn't have watchers, because watchers are literally groomed from birth. Like Giles was a watcher, his father was a watcher, his grandmother was a watcher. So y'all have watchers. For every
Oh
potential
gosh.
slayer, there is a watcher. Why didn't anybody activate these girls? Like,
Oh yikes. Even with that said, there something that Buffy does really well and shines at is flashback episodes when they're investigating the histories of their characters. I always enjoy those. So if I had to pick some iconic episodes of season 7, I would pick yikes. I want to say him is episode 6 is really funny and fun. I also would pick Lies My Parents Told Me, episode 17, which goes into Spike's background a bit more.
mhm.
And I would pick episode 22, the series finale, Chosen, which I do think is very well done.
I think so too. Like I said, the writing on this show is never bad. Some of the decisions, the things they choose to write about are like questionable, but the writing itself is
Questionable.
not bad.
So questionable.
Dawn was questionable. Needing to bring back Buffy because there was no new Slayer was a huge plot hole. The new Dawn, not Dawn the person, but the new Dawn of a bunch of Slayers fighting together like a sisterhood of Slayers. That was also super questionable and a huge plot hole. But overall, I felt
But
like
in
they
a
wrapped
sort
up
of
the show
feeling
nicely.
way was great because it's like, oh yeah, like all the girls around the world always had all the power. It's in that it feels good, even though it's a huge plot hole.
I do like that, but I also love the fact that Buffy doesn't have to do it alone anymore, because being a Slayer is marked with intense isolation, and it doesn't matter how many friends you have. She's always alone.
Alone. It's true.
And not having to be alone anymore is kind of a huge thing. I feel like they could have used this as a springboard for even another spinoff where, we follow a group of Slayers in a different part of the world, even. And maybe now, like, that could be done well. I wouldn't say redo a show like Buffy, but if there was like a Buffy inspired show where a group of people or even a group of sisters were fighting demons together, I would tune into that.
I would tune into that. Listen, I would love for maybe a limited series, and each season we follow like a Slayer and like their story through time. I think that'd be awesome. I would be so down for that.
Yeah, kind of like Skins with like less sex but more heartbreak. Yeah, I can
Yeah,
get
more
into
heart. Yeah,
that.
like every season, like maybe one season we do Nikki Wood, like, and then another season we do like a Slayer in China, and then like another season you do sort of you just keep following stories of Slayers. I would love something like that. I would be into that.
Yeah, I think that'd be super cool. So that was like the one thing that season 7 had to offer us. Honestly, that one thing aside, season 7 was incredibly basic to me. Like
Same.
seasons 5 and 7 were like, I think some of the most basic seasons of Buffy. So to recap, Alex and I are definitely on the same page that if you want to know what Buffy the Vampire Slayer was all about, seasons 2 and 3 are all you need to know.
Two and three. If you're not invested in giving the show like all these hours of your life, because it is over 100 episodes, season two,
Mhm.
you can watch season two and season three and get everything you need to know about the
Right.
show.
So the whole series is like 154 episodes. So those two seasons are only 44 episodes. And if you're really pressed for time and you want something a little bit lighter, definitely go for the 12 episodes season 1. It's really fun, it's really campy, and it's nothing that will rip your heart out or like fuck with your head in any way.
Right.
So
So
definitely those are our recommendations if you want to jump into the show.
so wrapping up, like overall, what's your good, bad, and basic about the entire series?
Um, the good, the relationships between Buffy and everyone in her life and the way that she handles any romantic or sexual partners. I thought that was really good. It really showed her strength as a person. And the way that she ended things with Spike show a level of self-respect that I think writers of other shows dropped the ball on. So really love Buffy, really love the writing and the cinematography on Buffy. I love the time capsule that is seasons 1 and 2. Basic, any and everything having to do with Alexander Harris. Um, and bad, any and everything having to do with Dawn. Sorry, but how did she get here? Like,
Oh gosh. Yeah, listen, the show is unparalleled. I think when you watch it you in its entirety, we feel how we feel now about Joss and that whole and Joss Whedon of, Wonder Woman and the Avengers fame, I think. But he did that. This is it. Like, I don't think you can watch this series and not understand um how unprecedented it is. It's just so clear, I think, in its singular vision and
Buffy
in
wasn't. Go ahead.
oh, I think it's so unprecedented in its sort of singular vision, in terms of plotting, narrative. One of Like I said, the biggest strength of this series is how aware the series is of itself and of its history and of its characters' history. Like, when it fumbles the ball, but it does not fumble it often. And
Mhm.
I know it's weird to talk about Buffy, the show, without talking about Angel, the show, because I think they're so intrinsically linked. But um, and y'all, I don't think we're gonna review Angel right away. We might eventually get to it, but to see that sort of scope, that because nowadays it's like a thing, like cinematic building a cinematic universe is a thing. This was the first iteration of it, right?
Mhm.
In like a film and TV sense, like Buffy is like its own cinematic universe, and it's just it's I like I said, it's unprecedented. It's wonderful. It doesn't fumble the ball often, and there's a reason why it's treated like the blueprint, and there's a reason why even now today it resonates as a cultural artifact beloved by fans and beloved by writers and creators. The bad Black people, they don't know what they're doing. Um,
Yeah,
I don't
I didn't even put that as a bad because I'd honestly forgotten about all of them except for Kendra.
um, it is unfortunate, I think, for me. I think for me as a Black woman, I don't know how you feel, because you're also a Black woman, but um I wish, I don't know, I guess I just wish people thought of us like in that way.
Yeah, so my feelings on that are the Black characters on the show. Like, I love that they cut Bianca Lawson a check, and that was cute, and she's still getting money because the show's on Hulu now. But I really wish they'd never written any Black characters on this show. I'd rather not be there at all than to have such bad representation and disposability, because and this is very, very prominent on Buffy. There are many shows on television right now that treat any and all characters, including supporting characters, as very disposable. But on a show like Buffy that doesn't do that, it is louder still when it happens. And when it
That's
keeps
true.
happening to Black people, it's enraging. Now, Joss
Right.
Whedon isn't perfect, and the writers weren't perfect, but they went out of their way to craft a sort of emotional bond between viewers and characters that they either failed to nurture with Black characters, or they severed without a second thought.
Right. And I think I agree with that. It's one thing to have a bad show treat its black characters as disposable, but on a show like this where everyone and everyone's role and everyone's character is so well thought out, it's much louder and I think much more disrespectful to then have a black character on a show like this be treated also in a disposable manner because that they can do better, they're just choosing not to, which is
Right.
more hurtful. It does that feels more
Right.
hurtful.
I mean, like, here's the thing. So, as a Black person growing up in the US, I'm able to watch something with an all white cast and enjoy it. But it has to be done right. It can't be no Friends where they live in New York, but there's never any Black people. And and it can't be a situation where I feel like that lack is intentional. Now, with Buffy, as watching Buffy as a woman, it's very clear that were a lot of women at the helm, not just a showrunner, but there were women in that writer's room. You can tell by the way
Right.
Buffy is written, by the way
And
Willow is
Mark
written,
Johnson, yeah.
right, by the way the trio is written, by the way Spike is written. Men would not write other men like this. Even if they're not a man like this and they mock men like this, they would not write about a man like this. They would feel like a betrayal to them to write about another man like this. That is a woman who's dealt with a Spike, a Xander, a Warren, a Jonathan, and Andrew, who is writing this. But as a Black person, I also know that that writer's room was incredibly white out, snow day. Like, there was not a Black person in that writer's room. I put money on that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. But overall I think that's the good is there's so much good, the bad is bad. The basic, oh yikes. The you know, I would give it overall, it's Buffy, bitch.
Don't nobody ever try to remake this show, please. You are biting off a lot.
You are. Although it's been put on hold, I think.
Look, I know that there's a lot of people that need a check, but that doesn't mean everything should be written.
Listen, I see how you could redo do this show. I see it. Like now, I would, because you know how we talk about certain things hit different when you. So you know how we talk like earlier, like in the previous episode, we talked about the reason why Angel works is because he's in that traditional girl role, but like you
Mhm.
don't feel, but you always understand that his character is important because ultimately, like he's a man, so like it hits different in a way.
Right. Right.
So you're still subverting tropes. There's a way you could do Buffy where like if you messed with the casting and you messed with the a tiny bit with the storylines, you could really have it be super poignant and you could make it hit different. But I think you would also just have to do it like, you would have to do it almost frame by frame. No, I would do it frame
Right.
by frame. Because
So yeah, I would probably do the same thing, except at the end of season 3, I would have like sent both Xander and Angel and Xander to hell. There would have been no Dawn, and season 7 would have never happened.
rude. That's so rude.
I said what I said. He should have been killed off just like Ron. Ron Weasley, shout out Harry Potter fans. So J.K. Rowling intended to kill Ron off in book 3 when he realizes that his rat is Peter Pettigrew. But because the movies were already out and fans had already loved him, she kept this little whiny shit in the books. And he is definitely like the wizard's response to Xander Harris. I don't
I
care.
feel like you can't. I feel like these days, like J.K. Rowling, you can't really take anything she say too serious though.
Oh no. She actually said this before she finished the book series, not now where she's retroactively trying to sabotage it because she doesn't have another good book in her.
Oh, okay.
Like
rude again. Yeah, this is it. This is it.
This was so cleansing.
This is so cleansing. I felt like I felt a catharsis.
All my life, I have waited to say how I feel about this show and these people on this show. I will say one last thought, though. I think Xander existed and survived through the show just so that teenage boys, many of whom were like him, could have someone to relate to on the series.
Oh, I thought it was like just to demonstrate like how the strength of being a mediocre white man, just like the strength of that. Like he survived 7 apocalypses, the end of the world, like, and he really shouldn't have. It's how far being like a regular ass white man will take you. You can just like survive all these things, and it's
real as hell.
So much like greater people like Kendra have died, and yet you keep on. You
right.
Like how? That's life. That's real as fuck.
Shit gets really real out here, and he doesn't just survive, he thrives. Every single season, Xander's life is on an upswing, no matter what's going on with anybody else.
It doesn't matter what happens, like it's on an upswing. Like he doesn't finish college. He still he doesn't go to college. He still like gets this amazing job in an amazing apartment, because that apartment was like so nice, like that he and Anya end up living in. I'm just like.
So Buffy, Willow, and Xander were like very, very young Gen Xers, and he was on the tail end of that period where you could secure a good future without a college education. So it's like all the things happen for Xander, no matter how shit he is. It's incredible. Buffy, though, is iconic. Get into the show. Definitely get into seasons 2 and 3 if you have the time. Seasons 1 if you're pressed for time. But Buffy is an iconic show. It definitely set the blueprint. Writers hit the mark on anyone who wasn't Black. And I really feel that the way that they dealt with, not necessarily toxic friendships, they didn't handle that so well, but toxic relationships, the way that was handled was very, very well. The character was incredibly human. She was flawed and she made many, many mistakes, but she had a level of accountability that is sorely lacking in modern characters. And hashtag bring back owning up to your mistakes and taking personal responsibility for your actions.
For your shit, yeah. So next time we will be discussing a show that I think is a direct descendant of Buffy, and is so similar to the show in a lot of ways, and and in other ways just so unfortunate. And that is the Vampire Diaries. So get ready, y'all. If you get ready, y'all, just it's about to get really real.
Right. So our Vampire Diaries episodes, it'll be 2 episodes because the series lasted 8 seasons. We are going to be talking about everything that made that, Buffy progeny, I'll call it, good, bad, and basic. If you are not caught up on Vampire Diaries or you haven't watched the series yet, it is currently streaming on Netflix. So get into it and get ready for when we debut that episode next week.
All right. Awesome. Thank you guys for checking in with us, and please subscribe to our Patreon. we've got lots of cool stuff that we've got in the tank for you. So donate and do that. And we will see you next time.
Absolutely. Share our podcast and definitely follow us at Good Bad Basic Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Bye, everyone.
Bye.